ba.
Oh, and here we are.
Oh, I love it. I
Ooh,
love it.
okay. Joanne, you're going to introduce
Mm-hmm.
us.
Yes, Sam. Thank you very much. Well, welcome for everyone who's here and anyone who's joining us in the recording. So, really appreciate that you're here. I am here with my lovely partners, Todd and Kat, and I am Joanne. And today we are going to be talking about it's one of my favorite kind of topics of du jour, I guess. And I think it's my favorite one only because it's just happening so often right now. But there's a lot of challenging. Um, it's a challenging times right now, regardless, right? More so than ever. And we have the wars which are happening, right? And the most recent stuff which is happening in with the Israelis and the Palestinians. We have a lot of climate anxiety that's out there. We have a lot of climate stuff which are there, and we have, animals. It's just getting hurt and stuff like that too. So or dying. So there's a lot of, and even COVID and all the stuff that's coming up around that, right? Um, so it's really kind of really challenging times, right? And so one thing that we want to talk about today, and I know we said it's going to be slightly different, right? It's a slightly different thing because we're going to practice how to kind of do some of this today with you. But before we go into the practice, we're just going to have a conversation about why it's so important to hold space in challenging times. And so let me first talk about holding space, or what holding space is. That might be kind of, people might not know, what the heck are you saying, holding space? Like, can you hold space? No, you can't. Yes, you can. Physically, maybe you can't. I don't know. But like for me as a leader, what I like about holding space is the ability to bring a group of people together to be able to hear what is going on, right? So to be able to create a space where conversations can come, right? And versus you being the one that's kind of like dictating and so forth. So it's just like about creating a space where people can kind of, you know, converse with each other, which is a really beautiful thing. It's always in a certain direction. It's always just support something. It's part of open space principles, if you ever guys have gone into it. But that's basically holding space, and there's many definitions of holding space, and I'd suggest Googling it. But I think it's a really key thing that leaders actually have, the ability to hold space, right, with each other, for themselves, for their teams, So, but that's, there's a lot of compassion in them. So that's what holding space is. And I don't know if you guys want to add anything to it. Maybe Ken, when you're talking about what holding space means to you. But so for you guys, what is important about holding space in challenging times?
Do you want to go first, Kat, or would you like me to?
Why don't you go first?
Okay. Whew. Well, I mean, Joanne, you touched on this a little bit because, the topics that you brought up, like the big global topics, whether it's wars or climate change or politics or whatever, they will occupy our brains, whether we want them to or not. Mm-hmm. And if as leaders we don't make the space for that, hold the space for that, then we risk an uncontrolled eruption. Is sort of the metaphor that's popping into my head right now, and there's ways to do that while protecting ourselves at the same time, because I think that one of the reasons that this can be such a scary topic for so many people is because it feels unsafe. And specifically, it feels unsafe to a leader to make space for something that is unrelated, presumably, to whatever the activity is that this team that's navigating challenge has to deal with, whether it's personal, political, global, whatever. So that's why it's important to me, because it's going to be there whether we want it to be there or not. And ignoring it doesn't make it go away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would echo what you guys have said, and I'll just say it in a slightly different way. We all have emotions. We all have good and bad emotions. We all have things going on in our lives or things going on around us. It could be around the globe that affect us or affect our friends or affect what we believe will happen to us, with us, for us. And us can be us individually, our communities, our families, whatever the definition is.
Mm-hmm.
So we always have emotions, good and bad. But in the world that we all tend to work in, there's the expectation that you check your emotions at the door. You just buck up and be a professional. You just buck up and be an adult. You know, there's lots of expressions I'm sure we've heard. Some of them are very impolite. You know, men will be told man up. Women will be told, you know, quit being so weak or whatever. Like there's all these really negative expressions if we bring our emotions to work. And in reality, our emotions are so powerful, both in terms of holding us back if we're not learning how to work with them. And they're also extremely powerful in giving us information if we learn how to listen to them and work with them the right way. Yeah, so we always have to treat our emotions as partners, never as enemies or threats or inconveniences. Yeah, the more that we can learn to work with our emotions, the more effective we're going to be. If we have lots of strong emotions, good or bad, and we sort of sideline them and pretend that we don't have them, we're actually reducing our ability to think. We're reducing our ability to connect with other people. So we're causing all sorts of limitations that are very serious limitations, especially given some of the decisions that a lot of leaders need to make these days. So for me, it's really important that we acknowledge emotions and learn to work with them individually and collectively so that we can leverage the power of them rather than constantly being held back by them. So for me, holding space really means creating the context where people can be really, truly whole people and the most functional people by really showing up as a complete person with emotions, but not necessarily governed by emotions.
I like that. Emotions are partners.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
like
beautiful.
that
It's gonna,
yeah, it is, isn't it? I love that.
I'm gonna go back to this recording and then I just treat them as our partners. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think that
Not always easy to do though.
no. Yeah, I hear you. I keep watching.
Sometimes the simplest stuff is the toughest stuff.
Exactly.
So the one of the things I wonder about too is where I think maybe sometimes this doesn't kind of come up is because of conflict, right? Like we feel that, you know, we may have, especially in global challenges, right? Not in or anything that's happening outside, you know, basically a lot of people can relate to. Like I think of COVID, who's got the vaccine, who doesn't get the vaccine. Everyone has different kind of views of some of that stuff too. So what I find is that I think just our leaders just don't know how to kind of hold that space without having that like a conflict. They're afraid of the conflict that may be coming out of it, right? So it's so if we can be able to do it in a certain way where this conflict doesn't necessarily have to doesn't break out amongst team members, then that's good.
Joel, can I interrupt for just half a sec? Because the other thing, and I'm so sorry to do that, but the thing that came up to me while you were saying that, and that I think maybe you were going to get to, but here I go, is the leader in those situations can also have a really strong opinion on one side or the other. Like they can be so super passionate about, and you know, the example, like whether you're vaccinated, whether I'm not vaccinated, whether I'm this, whether I'm that, like they can have a really, really strong opinion in that moment, and holding that space can be a super challenge, particularly because of that.
Yes. And that's, as a leader, knowing that you're going into that particular space, your relationship with that will let you know whether or not you can hold that space in a neutral way. right?
Mm.
Because it can be really quite difficult for people to actually hold space when it's like I think of mediators. So one of the persons that I learned how to do some mediation and stuff like that. So one of the ladies that I learned from mediation from was Diane
Mm.
Mushel Hamilton, and what Diane can get into certain situations, and she knows when she's triggered, where she can't be in it. She will walk out of it, right? So
Mm.
because she knows she can't be neutral. She's just, so it's best to kind of, so sometimes in those cases you have to kind of seek another person to kind of help or support you or something like that. But yeah, it's a good point. It's a really good point. It is very difficult. I don't think this is it is a very difficult thing. I think the emotional aspect of a leader trying to do this as well is really challenging. So this isn't. I want them all to do it. I do.
Yeah.
But and I can realize why it can be really challenging too.
And sometimes when that happens, assuming that there's enough trust and connection among the team members, sometimes it doesn't always have to be the leader that does it. I think it's the leader who's responsible to make sure it's happening regularly. But I think the team members also, once the trust and the techniques and all these other things have sort of been established, maybe one team member who feels a little bit more neutrally or doesn't feel quite so heated, or maybe they can sort of step up and do the mediation or the holding space role, the leading of that process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it takes time to get to that point, but I think once people have worked together for a while, they know each other, they like each other, they trust each other. It doesn't always have to be the leader to do it. And sometimes the leader does need to say, look, I feel very strongly about this, but I respect you guys as team members. And I want us to first regulate ourselves enough without shutting ourselves down so that we can actually get into the real creative conflict discussions, if that's the right thing to do, and really figure out how do we solve this problem better. But let's make sure that we're really honoring and recognizing what our emotions are. And, because if I'm the leader and I'm feeling overly heated about something, and I feel enough trust and connection and technique with somebody else on the team, I can say, can you lead, or can you be responsible, keep responsibility for this?
Yeah, that's perfect. And I love, you just hit me with how me as a coach is actually brought in to be that neutral facilitator too, right?
Yeah.
So there can be individual team member, or there's other members that are there that may have the ability to do it, or someone else is around. So I love it.
Yeah. And Joanne, you've got a bit of a technique for us.
Yeah, I know. I was going to go
excited
into
about
it. Okay, so to be fair, I learned it from someone else who learned it from someone else. So I learned it from Lisa Atkins, who we would have loved to have had on today's episode. But Lisa Atkins has this beautiful ability. If anyone knows her, she holds space just delightfully, just beautiful. And so she learned a practice, it's called the circle practice, and it was conducted by this lady who was working with people like in the climate anxiety. And so the way it goes, and which I think it's just amazing, because it kind of you can set it up in a way where we don't get into the conflict of the two different sides, right? So which I think, this could be an easy thing for those leaders who want to try, right? But you have to kind of set it up with the rules and all that kind of stuff. So the first thing, what you do is there is 2 rounds. So basically everyone's going to be talking for like 2 minutes each. And basically when we do talk, you're going to answer a question. The question that I'm going to ask you is basically, how are you feeling about this certain situation? We'll go through it in a second. But it's really directed to the individual, right? So it's not necessarily a political view or anything like that, but like, how is it within yourself, right? Like what is happening to you when, you heard about, the news climate news that just came out, right? Or the COVID stats, which are there, whatever it is, that's really recent. And so you'd open up from that perspective, and then basically everyone would have the 2 minutes to answer. Now, there is no cross checking back. There's no cross discussion, right? So there's nothing like, oh yeah, and there's nothing like I can't go and say, Kat, oh, I'm like, oh, I feel so bad. Like you're not saying anything. You're just allowing for everyone to say like it's actually around, it's 3 minutes, but we're going to do it in 2. We're going to say for 2 minutes, like give some time to answer about that topic. And the most important thing is the second round, actually. So after everyone's answered it, we go into a second round, and I'll guide with a powerful question for that one. But it's like, now that you've heard what everyone said, like what's now coming up for you? Okay. And so this particular practice itself is to allow for people, like that second question allows for people to really, talk about what they're hearing from each other. And this is where you'll start to see things kind of merge together, and the team will start converging, which is neat. Okay, so are we ready to give it a try? Yeah.
I love being a guinea pig. Yep, let's do it.
Yay! Okay, good. So here we go. So here's the question, and I will answer it as well, so we can go through it. But the question is, given all of what we're seeing in the world right now, and we're seeing all the wars which are happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Israel and Palestine, excuse me. What's happening in climate, all the climate news, just even it could be what's happening at your home, like given all of these things which are happening right now, like what's coming up for you? And the other thing is too, I just want to make sure you're also speaking from your heart, right? So whatever comes up it's coming from your heart, right? So what's coming up for you?
Who shall start?
Kat.
Yeah. Okay.
I was going to say, can the guinea pig start first?
I'll go. Sure, I'll go. If you want, if you'd like me to go, I'll go. Shall I?
Yeah. Thank you.
So this is a complex one because a lot of the topics are connected. So let's see what's coming up for me right now. Anger. Helplessness. A lot of sorrow. And I think those are connected, the helplessness and the sorrow and the anger. When I think of world events, including climate, there's a little bit of guilt. It's not interesting. It's, that feeling of what could I have done differently? Although, also with recognizing that on a global scale, I'm a dot. Fear for the future, a lot of fear for the future. Because whether it's climate or geopolitics, there's a lot of uncertainty. Who's timekeeping for me? Are you doing?
I am.
Okay. And yeah, and there's this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. It's like COVID. When COVID, after the first year of COVID, I said, I feel like I've spent a whole year grieving, and it's not as much COVID anymore, but I feel like I haven't stopped. I've just been grieving.
time's up.
Okay.
It's really hard not to respond. Okay, what's coming up for me? You said anger, Todd, and for me, it's actually at times it's absolute rage. It's rage at how blind people are, how willfully blind they are. There's lots of reasons for it, but it really is. Sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's rage at how willfully blind people are. There is fear and sort of thinking what could be the worst case scenario. But at the same time, also, because of some of the stuff that I'm seeking out, like really trying to find people who really are qualified to make some of these forecasts, I'm also feeling like incredible optimism and curiosity. Thank God we have that name in our title. Curiosity, because I know what we're capable of as a human race. I know what we're capable of in different groups of people in different societies. The question is whether we're really going to do it and what's going to trigger it. So that's sort of all those, there's curiosities around what's possible, what will it take, all those types of things. Sadness as well. Yeah, I mean, that's a really big one. And the sadness is actually for what we've lost and what future generations are simply not going to have. So today I met a friend for coffee, and we sat out on the patio in this gorgeous patio, beautiful fall day. Yes, we had to wear jackets. It wasn't exactly summer anymore, but for late October, it was still very warm. But I'm just thinking of all of these weather patterns that we grew up with. And I used to ski a lot, and knowing how much snow there used to be in the winter in some places. And, just how beautiful the world was. And really, and again, there's a curiosity of, I wonder what people in the future will find to be beautiful about nature and about the earth and about the climate, because it's going to be very different than what we grew up with.
Time. Yeah, I get a lot of mixed emotions with what's happening. I almost want to feel very much in the present. I don't like what comes up for me sometimes is not to go too far into the future, not go into the past, but want to live more in the time right now. I'm feeling quite anxious. It's sad, I guess, in a way. And it's interesting because I did a whole thing last week with a group of people called The Week with Frederick Leroux. And it was absolutely amazing. And we went through a roller coaster of highs and lows and highs as we process what's happening in climate. And at the very, like you went low, but then you went up really beautifully. And so for me, it kind of gave me hope that we can do something. And I get reminded to be in the present now, and not wait for it to happen. Nothing else, but what can I do right now to support that? So that's what's filling my mind a lot. Is trying to figure out what I can do right now. Okay, so we'll stop there. Now, basically, we're gonna go back around, just like a quick, 30 seconds, 40 seconds or so. Just know what's coming up for you now. Again, speaking from your heart, not talking to cross-examining and another person's position or anything like that. It's just like what's happening now that you heard everybody. And whoever wants to start can start. Doesn't have to be the same order.
I'm happy to go in the same order if you want, but if you'd like to start, Kat, that's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So what's coming up for me now is I feel seen. Like it was good to, sort of know that I had your undivided attention for that. And what was really good about hearing both of you is that while our positions are different, they're like a Venn diagram. Like we overlap in some pretty cool places. And I'm really curious about that space that's in the middle where all three circles overlap. I'm curious to know more about what's there. So that's what's coming up for me right now.
Thanks, Todd.
What's coming up for me is, I like that, Todd. I think that's really interesting. Joanne, when you were talking about really being in the moment, that's sort of something that I'm doing a lot more of these days because I was so incredibly sick for the last 6 years. And pretty well since the beginning of this year, I'm more or less back, to being reasonably healthy and pretty confident that I'm going to get there. But there's two things that really came up when I sort of had that memory come back of what my life was like over the last 6 years, or, a year ago for 6 years, where I was literally having to research 2 or 3 hours a day, do all sorts of experimentation, and really try to self-diagnose and figure out what was wrong with me because the doctors were just going to give me drugs. And I wasn't willing to do that. And I'm in the place now where I can really be much more in the moment with a lot more joy, and not in the moment in kind of a panic feeling or frustration or anger, but really in the moment with joy and beauty and laughter, which I haven't had a lot of in the last few years. And it used to be pretty natural for me. But there's another piece that also sort of came up, which is completely like a random different direction, which is if I was able to sort of cure myself or heal myself or whatever the right term is in such a complex situation and do it with the tools that are available to me, I'm pretty confident that we can actually do that as a world as well, if people are willing to put in the time and the energy. And that comes back to this. I'm curious what it's going to take to engage people in this curiosity, what can actually be pretty fun at times, especially when you start seeing small strides forward. Yeah, so there's lots of opportunity. And I think even though there's really scary times ahead, there also can be some really deeply meaningful joy that we can get from this as well.
So what's coming up for me as we is that there's this I'm very grateful to be in this space where we're able to kind of bring out our emotions and then also see this how we weave together and stuff like that. And I'm very grateful for this type of conversation. And I like I like the aspect of being heard too. I think it's just having the space where I can talk, I think is really great. So, okay, so I'm going to, flip out of it. Kind of go, woo, bah! But because it is 7:28, right? So I just want to make sure we close up. But that to me, I mean, I don't have a resource or something, a handout for that. But if I can find one, I'll definitely kind of provide it. But it's a really great way, and I love what you're saying, Todd. Like feeling like you're being heard. Right. And what I would be is, I know I pointed out, Kat to talk first. So usually you let people, whoever wants to talk, but I went and pointed out Kat, but it's a rookie thing. So for me, it's really important to kind of give everybody that space to do the 3 minutes and just to talk, because you can see how beautiful it was just to allow them just to, come out. And there's no, talking about anything in particular. You could have talked a little bit more specifically about the thing. That's okay too. But you would do it from your perspective and from your heart, right? Type of thing of that. So I thought it was just beautiful. So 7:29. What is it we want to leave?
Can I would love to, sorry, I have to jump in.
Yeah, no.
Todd, it's taking off on what you were saying about feeling heard, but what really is making me feel is even though I really enjoy spending time with you guys, I talk with you regularly, I feel very close to you, but I feel like we connected at a human level. And I'm just thinking, what would this feel like in a business team where generally we're going to be a little bit more guarded, especially in some of the environments that I work in? And it really feels like I connected with you at a human level that I've never connected with you before at.
Mhm.
And even though we've had very open conversations and et cetera, like it just really feels like we put our humanity forward, kind of took off our masks. And I think that's really where the power is for people to then connect as humans and then figure out with the skill sets, with the expertise that I've got, how do we work together and start that I've got, that you've got, how do we work together now to really try and solve this problem, as opposed to a bunch of talking heads coming together.
Mhm.
Yeah. The humanness is just really powerful for me right now.
I-
Awesome.
That's mic drop.
She did
That's it. We're
too.
done.
She did too. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
what happens when I get together with you guys.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome. I don't know if anything else you want to add, Todd, but
I really don't. I think it's absolutely right. You know, what's
Yeah.
possible when we're connected like this, and you know, look how fast this happened.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this
So-
with us, John. It was really,
Yeah.
really powerful.
I didn't think I could get closer to you two, but there you go.
and
And we did it live and on camera.
And in 3 different cities.
I know.
All right. Thank you all.
Okay. I'll end us. All
Good
right.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Night.